Today from the Global Lane, immigration and border wall battles. Will Trump deliver on his promise or will the courts strike him down? China tariffs and Iranian threats. Are higher prices for gasoline and consumer goods on the way? As activists march for abortion rights, pro-life speech is shut down on American college campuses. And why you won't see this popular Christian film in Canada. And it's all right here, right now from the Global Lane. Congress and the White House are locked in an epic battle over funding for President Trump's promised border wall. The Trump administration wants to move up to $6 billion from the military to shore up outdated barriers to slow down a record-breaking number of illegal crossings. Lawsuits, however, are challenging these efforts on almost every turn. Here's Chuck Holton with the latest.
We're asking for an order blocking the use of these funds that Congress didn't appropriate to build a wall on the border. It's very simple. They didn't get the money for it. They can't build it.
Sierra Club members are dedicated to protecting fragile ecosystems and long-standing communities on the southern border. And obviously building a 1,500-mile contiguous wall is certainly not going to help us in that endeavor.
While these legal and political battles wage on, better barriers are going up, courtesy of the military and the Army Corps of Engineers. One of the stated missions of that agency's 37,000 civilian and military employees is to deliver vital public and military engineering services to strengthen our nation's security. The thousands of illegal crossers entering the United States each day from many different countries are a definite security concern, especially for locals like this El Paso woman.
There is an urgency. Yes, there is. They're coming in now. It was by the hundreds, now it's by the thousands a day. We have to do something. Thousands of people are going to be released into our community, and we don't even know who they are.
The U.S. Border Patrol used existing funding that was authorized under the Obama administration to recently build about 4 miles of this bollard-style fencing. It's 18 feet high, it's got no climb on the top, and it works very effectively against people crossing illegally. But here's the problem. If you only do the fencing 4 miles at a time, what you run into is what we have right here. The fence ends, and now here's Mexico over on this side. So it's not very difficult for people to just walk right around the fence and come into the United States illegally.
We have to do something. I suggest that. I was hoping that they would just bring martial law. They need to bring martial law.
And while arguments continue thousands of miles away in Washington over whether this is a national emergency, border authorities and American citizens struggle with the daily crush of illegal crossers and thousands being released onto city streets.
Chuck Holton joins us by video Skype with more. Chuck, many Democrats say the president is exaggerating this crisis. There's no border crisis. What have you witnessed there?
Well, Gary, I think all you have to do is go there and see it for yourself, or else just talk to somebody who lives down there. They'll tell you that it is definitely a crisis. Talk to the men and women who are putting their lives on the line every day with the Border Patrol, and they'll tell you it's a crisis. Put it this way: if you just run the numbers, the U.S. Customs and Border Protection has something like 4,000 beds for illegal migrants or legal migrants even who cross the border from the south and are held in detention until their asylum claims can be initially heard. They have 4,000 beds. When I was down there a few weeks ago, they had 14,000 people in detention. And that's why we're seeing this tens of thousands of people being allowed to just walk, just leave and go into the United States with no oversight whatsoever.
And they know they can get in right now. So
That's right.
The people you talk to at the border, I'm thinking of Americans, mostly citizens. What are they saying about a wall, new and reinforced existing barriers? Do they want them?
I have not talked to anybody lately on the U.S. southern border that did not want a barrier. When they see the effects of this unfettered migration, of this tidal wave of humanity that's coming across, they realize that it would be money well spent. They also realize that the next administration, whoever that happens to be, will not be able to pull it down. The wall is something that will stand the test of time. If we can get that barrier put in place, it's going to serve as a deterrent for decades and indeed probably a century or more to come. And that is something that people on the southern border, Americans, desperately need. Not just because of the massive crush of people who's coming across, but because, for example, their cattle are coming across from Mexico into the United States, and they're infecting American cattle with diseases that haven't been seen in the United States for a long, long time. And that threatens American food security and in turn threatens national security as well.
Not to mention some of the diseases that the people are bringing in as well.
Right.
Now, I know President Trump originally threatened to send illegal immigrants to sanctuary cities. Remember that? And then the Democrat-run cities in Florida, he kind of backed off from those. And now we see that thousands have been flown from Texas, you were in Texas, to holding facilities in California and elsewhere. What do you think the strategy is, Chuck?
Well, the strategy is just reacting to this massive crush of humanity. I mean, they have so many people coming across, over 100,000 people a month now and climbing, that they don't have anywhere to put these people.
Chuck, what is the solution then? The president says he wants an end to chain migration. He wants a merit-based immigration system. Nancy Pelosi says a merit-based system is condescending. What do you see happening here? Anything at all?
Well, I mean, the Trump administration is having to get very, very creative to try and find the money to build that barrier. The barrier is step one. It really is. Now, we can address the other pull factors as far as the kinds of money that these people can get by, for example, cutting off funds to Cubans and Haitians who come into the United States that are right now eligible for all kinds of benefits, lifting that temporary protected status, those kinds of things. But no matter what the president does, he's getting lawsuits brought against him. And the Democrats know that it doesn't matter how ridiculous the lawsuit is. I mean, right now, the Sierra Club has brought a lawsuit that says that it's too much of an environmental impact to build the wall, when in reality, the hundreds of thousands of migrants coming across create a much larger environmental impact than a wall would. But it doesn't matter how ridiculous the lawsuit is, as long as it runs out the clock.
Okay, Chuck Holton, thanks for the additional insights. We appreciate you. God bless.
People want to know, is there a plan and how do you find it?
CBN presents The Plan. 8 keys for understanding God's will for your life.
We're going to talk about God's plan for your life.
Is there a plan for everyone's life?
In Pat Robertson's latest teaching, you'll discover the secret to knowing and living out God's unique purpose for you.
The plan of God will be unfolded in your life in ways you couldn't believe possible.
In The Plan, Pat reveals the principles to understanding God's will, so that you will be filled with peace, provision, joy, and satisfaction. Plus, see amazing stories of how others are living out their individual purpose intended by God.
God is faithful, and we did what He told us to do.
Live the life God has designed for you.
I hope that God works out a plan in you that will bring blessing, joy, peace, and happiness.
Get The Plan. Call 1-800-700-7000 or visit CBN.com.
Remember for a moment what it was like to be a child. You believed every story you were told. You saw a world full of endless possibilities. What stories will the world's orphaned and at-risk children believe? We believe the Bible tells the only story truly worth believing. We believe that every child should have the opportunity to dream, the chance to take challenges and turn them into possibilities, the chance to stand on the promises of God, to recognize their place in the greatest story ever told. They have their whole lives ahead of them. Theirs is a world of endless possibilities. They are looking for a story to believe. We will tell them that story. Will you join us?
China and Iran. What might rising trade and geopolitical tensions mean for you on the home front this summer? Higher prices at the gasoline pump? More costly consumer goods when you shop at a store or online? Well, here to fill us in about the possible China and Iran effect on your pocketbook is national radio and TV host, Financial Issues Stewardship Ministries CEO, Dan Celia. Dan, it's good to see you again. So first, let's discuss increased tariffs that were imposed by this president on China. What will it likely mean for the average American?
Well, some believe, Gary, that the average American is going to be paying more for those goods. Obviously, that tariff going in some cases from 10 to 25%, and In other cases, just to 25%. Now, you know, all of us have been in a Walmart at some point in our life, and when you look on the shelves, everything is made in China. So theory being that the average consumer is going to be paying a lot more money for those products. I don't believe that's going to be the case, Gary. I'm probably a lone wolf there in that camp. But I do know this much about China. The last thing they can afford is to lose market share. Now, they are going to have to voluntarily give up market share by passing through all of the tariff to the consumer here in America. And I think the odds of them doing that is very unlikely, because if they lose market share, it's going to be very difficult to get it back. Now, one thing about the American consumer is we're very resilient. And even long before the Great Depression, we have been able to change our buying habits on a dime. And we've been able to do that very quickly through recessions, through depressions, through all kinds of economic turmoil. We will change our buying habits. So it is likely, as these goods, if they do become more expensive, the American consumer is going to change how they buy, where they buy, and maybe even why they buy. Maybe they just want to buy American. So I think there is going to be a lot of changes in that. And I don't believe that these goods alone are going to dramatically impact our discretionary income to the point of hurting our economy. Now, there's other reasons why the economy could be getting hurt, but I really don't believe that the tariffs in and of themselves, because of those reasons, are going to really impact us in a powerful way.
Well, what do you think will happen then, Dan, in the long term? Are things going to even out a bit on this?
Well, in the long term, Gary, things are going to get better. I mean, this is really a situation that in the long term, we all are going to be far better off. We're going to have more diversification in where we're getting products from. Companies are going to expand where products are being made. If they're leaving China, they're not going to just go to Vietnam. They're probably going to go to other areas of Asia, Pacific Rim, and even South America, and become a little bit more diversified to avoid this. And we're not going to be beholden to any one country. Now, the other side of this in the long term is, in China's mind, the long term may be January 2021, when there's a new inauguration for a new president, who they may be working very, very hard to make sure that President Trump doesn't get reelected again. And I think from a cyber perspective, they have the ability to probably impact that. That's a little bit of a scary thought, but it is a possibility. So they may be looking at it on a short-term basis just until there's a regime change, so to speak, here in America. And certainly, just about no matter who gets reelected, if it's not this president, chances are they will cave very quickly, and we'll be right back where we started.
Right where we were before Trump came in. Now let's move forward quickly on Iran. We've already seen some drone attacks against Saudi oil terminals, growing tensions with Iran in the Persian Gulf. So what impact might this have, Dan, on oil and gas prices and what we pay at the pump this summer?
Well, you know, it's very interesting, Gary. In the midst of all this, our gasoline prices have come down for the last couple of weeks. Our prices to the pump, while gasoline oil is going up a little bit. Right now, it's looking like it's going to have very little impact, only because demand, at the very same time that the flow of oil is being interrupted, demand globally is going down. Now, that's not a good thing. It just means economies are suffering a little bit. And with China now in factory orders, manufacturing, productivity dropping, China, Gary, the #1 importer of crude oil, that places an awful lot of burden on supply. So with China dropping in their economy, that is freeing up supply. So really all this interruption in flows of oil that we've had due to Iran and a couple other things are being offset by a lack of demand. So we haven't felt it, and I got a feeling it could be like that through the rest of the summer.
Okay, Dan Celia, Financial Issues Stewardship Ministries, we appreciate you. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Gary. I appreciate being here.
It's about the competition.
I kind of put that pressure on myself, and I think people had expectations.
It's about overcoming.
We use this phrase all the time, keep chopping, keep practicing hard.
It's about going the distance.
You know, I think as a father, it's my job, to lead, just be the best husband and father I can be.
Watch Going the Distance with Sean Brown Saturday night at 7:30 on the CBN News Channel.
Woohoo! Hi, Superbook fans. Here's something else you'll love. It's the new Superbook Bible app. It's packed with games, activities, and Superbook episodes that you can watch for free. Oh, no! There's trivia, a fun daily devotional, and answers to your Bible questions. Plus, an easy-to-understand Bible the whole family will enjoy. You can even create your own Superbook character. Ta-da! Whoa!
Millsburg Falls man coming.
Sorry, pardon me. Sorry, excuse me. Ouch!
Are you getting this?
Earn super points to win daily prizes, too. And so much more! Time to get back to my adventures. See you soon! It's the new Superbook Bible app. Free downloads on iTunes, Google Play, and Amazon.
How can you find God's plan for your life?
CBN presents The Plan, 8 Keys to Understanding God's Will for Your Life. In Pat Robertson's latest teaching, you'll discover the steps to take in following God's plan, how to know for certain when God is leading you, how to get rid of spiritual blindness and see God work.
God said, I've got a plan to give you a future and a hope.
Get The Plan. Call 1-800-700-7000 or visit CBN.com.
Heartbeat laws protecting the unborn from abortion after a heartbeat is detected, usually at 8 weeks, are spreading across the country. 8 states have passed heartbeat bills so far this year, but that doesn't mean that Americans are suddenly becoming more pro-life. Pro-life college students are often ostracized and even assaulted for voicing their views. Well, joining us to share some insights on this subject and some other happenings on America's college campuses is Campus Reform's Emma Michelle. So, Emma, tell us what pro-life students are facing.
Well, really, the interesting thing about the pro-life movement on campus is that these are students that are standing up for the unborn. They're standing up for people who are voiceless. And the so-called social justice left loves to lash out against them with intimidation and harassment and even violence. One of our own correspondents, Bernadette Tazy, actually had a professor scribble out her chalk messages that were pro-life and say, this is not a free speech zone. Campuses are not the place for free speech. And the reason why I wrote this opinion piece about this issue is because things recently came to a head with Pennsylvania Representative Brian Sims, who was filmed on video. He filmed himself harassing an elderly woman who was praying outside a Planned Parenthood clinic. And the video made the rounds, and a lot of people were very shocked. And my point here is that Brian Sims' behavior really should not surprise us, because the way that he was treating those Christians outside the Planned Parenthood clinic is exactly how Christians and conservatives and pro-life students are treated on our college campuses right now.
What impact does that have on our society, those type of actions?
Well, actually, the Leadership Institute's Campus Reform recently wrote a story about a study that says most students think that hate speech should not be protected within free speech. And the interesting thing about that is hate speech is not a legally recognized term. It's very vague and fluid. And that should be very alarming to us, because it means that students don't actually understand what free speech is. Free speech is meant to protect the viewpoints of people whose views are unpopular, people like pro-life students or like conservative or Christian students who are facing intimidation for the things that they believe. And really the impact that this has when this becomes accepted on college campuses is that those students are going to take that with them into the real world. And what that's going to lead to is a culture of intolerance against people who have different different views. This is something that we've seen a lot of with the backlash to these restrictions on abortion in states across the country. There has been an unprecedented level of vitriol against the pro-life movement for these things. People forgetting that these are leaders that people in these states have elected. They've run on these platforms. They're pro-life people. There's no surprise there. What we're really seeing is intolerance towards ideas that are unpopular, like the pro-life movement.
And that is shocking. I think that poll showed that 41% think that hate speech should not be protected. And I think the concern, Emma, is who decides what is hateful speech and what isn't? It seems that that is subjective, is it not?
It is absolutely subjective. And the scary thing about that is, all you are is a few law changes away from Christians or conservatives or whatever movement being deemed as hateful, and then they are no longer allowed to express those opinions. And we have to remember that America was founded by dissidents. They were people who didn't like their government. They didn't like the corrupt church that they were forced to be a part of. So they started an entire country with the radical idea that everyone's views should be respected and everyone should have a right to their opinion, even if it's unpopular, even if it's deemed hateful. And the really scary thing, it's a very slippery slope when you start deciding what speech is allowed and what speech isn't. You get very quickly into some George Orwell territory there, and that's not a place where I think we want to see our country go right now.
Well, we could probably learn a few lessons from China and what they're doing. But finally, there is some good news at Morehouse College when billionaire philanthropist Robert F. Smith told the 400 graduates of that historically black college that he was paying all their student loans. Any downside to that, Emma? What's your concern about that?
Well, this is actually a really great story because it shows the positive effects of capitalism. It shows the things that private wealth can do within our country. And, what's sad is people like Bernie Sanders, people like AOC, who say that it's immoral to have a society with billionaires. They would have rather seen this not happen, because the fact here is that Robert F. Smith would never have been able to amass that wealth if we were living under policies like Bernie Sanders and his socialist friends.
So free college tuition, but let's not have policies that allow someone to pay off 400 student loans.
Yeah, the interesting thing is AOC did applaud him for giving away this money, but she didn't reconcile that with the fact that she thought billionaires were immoral. And, this really just shows America is such a generous country. In the past year alone, Americans donated $410 billion to charity. We give more money to charity than any other country in the world. And that is made possible by capitalism. It's made possible by good people being able to make profit and give that away freely. And the cool thing here is that Robert F. Smith was allowed to choose a college to donate to that he believed in its mission, to develop the character of young black men. That's a very, very cool thing for him to want to get involved with. And he did it freely. He did it on his own accord. The government is a notoriously poor steward of resources. So if someone wanted to say, well, this is what we should be doing with all college, billionaires should have to pay for all college, that's not a great idea, because the government is not good at picking and choosing these things, not as good as private citizens are.
And you and I would end up paying our taxes much higher. It's okay.
Yes, we would.
Emma Michelle of the Leadership Institute's Campus Reform, thank you for setting us straight.
As the world watches from the outside,
it's a big diplomatic tug of war here in the Middle East.
Go inside the story with Jerusalem Dateline.
Israeli archaeologists are talking about a discovery that could change the thinking about the Temple Mount.
Join CBN Jerusalem Bureau Chief Chris Mitchell and get the biblical perspective on the events shaping the world.
What starts in Israel then ends up going to other places.
Watch Jerusalem Dateline Friday night at 9:30 on the CBN News Channel.
Orphans Promise is committed to loving and serving at-risk children, to helping keep families together, and to creating opportunities for strong and sustainable communities around the world. We're working in over 60 countries around the world, and with your help, we can do even more. There's an old African proverb I love that says, if you want to run fast, run alone. But if you want to run far, run together. At Orphans Promise, we want to run far so we can touch the lives of as many orphaned and vulnerable children as possible. But we don't want to go alone. We're out to change the world, one child, one family, one community at a time. Will you join us?
Meet the pastors who are preaching the gospel in a fresh, fearless way. I'm Roberto Torres Cedillo. Join me each week for Next Gen Voices. And watch God transform a generation.
The pro-life film Unplanned was one of the surprise hits of the spring. It's made more than $18 million at the box office since its release in March. Unplanned is the true life story of Abby Johnson, a former Planned Parenthood clinic director. If you haven't seen it, I'd recommend it. But if you live in Canada, forget it, eh? No one wants to distribute the film in the Great White North. Two of the largest film distributors in Canada say they're not planning to show it. Abby Johnson says she wonders what they're afraid of. Distributors turned down the film because of its content. Could it be the explicit sex, gratuitous violence, filthy language, nudity? Nope, there's none of that in the movie. Distributors say they find the film's pro-life message objectionable. I'm guessing they just don't want people to see what actually happens to an unborn baby during an abortion. That's because the film's graphic depiction of that is changing the hearts and minds of abortion industry workers and those considering having an abortion. Abby Johnson says since Unplanned's release, at least 500 abortion clinic workers have contacted her organization to inquire about leaving their jobs. You see, science and technology have changed everything. Advancements in 3 and 4D ultrasound imaging now reveal what had been hidden from view when the U.S. Supreme Court protected abortion 45 years ago. Yes, a fetus is more than black and white shadows of tissue in the womb. It's a living human being with a heartbeat, a baby growing inside the womb. Canadians, that's what the film distributors in your country don't want you to see. So why is that so offensive and objectionable? Many people who support abortion say women have a right to their own bodies. But the ultrasounds prove it's not just the woman's body that is worth protecting. There's another human being to consider, one that's deserving of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Yes, there's still a great divide on this issue in the United States and in Canada. It's likely to be debated in the next election. So, to the film distributors, I say this. Let the people see the film in Canada and decide for themselves. The Bible tells us in John 8:32, "You shall know the truth, and the truth shall make you free." So let's not fear the truth or the film Unplanned. People should see the truth of what is happening to the most innocent in our society. And let's all celebrate life. Well, that's it from the Global Lane. Be sure to follow us on Facebook, iTunes, SoundCloud, YouTube, and Twitter. And until next time, be blessed.